My sister banned me from her wedding, accusing me of stealing her fiancé's heart. But the truth came out. Now he's refusing to marry her, and her perfect day has turned into a nightmare. Greetings everyone, I'm Michelle, a 21-year-old woman, and I'm seeking some insight. My older sister, Emily, who is 23, was set to marry Jonathan, also 24. Their relationship seemed perfect to everyone. They had been together for years, and we all thought they were a match made in heaven. Yet, recent events have completely upended everything, throwing their wedding into uncertainty. The reason? My sister barred me from attending. This led Jonathan to call off the marriage. What's more, Emily believes Jonathan has feelings for me. I know this sounds incredible, but please let me explain. To give you some background, my relationship with my family, including my parents and sister, has never been close. I began to drift apart from them when I started college, though no major incident caused a dramatic rift. After moving out for school, I rarely spent significant time at home. During breaks like spring holidays, I'd usually travel or stay with my grandparents instead of returning home, finding it a more agreeable option than dealing with the uncomfortable atmosphere there. The truth is, I don't align with my sister or parents in any meaningful way. We simply never connected. I felt like an outsider in their world, a realm distinct from my own. They never seemed to grasp who I was, and honestly, they didn't try. Growing up, they'd bond over things that held no interest for me, and whenever I voiced my passions, I felt like I was speaking a foreign language. They'd offer perfunctory nods before steering the conversation back to their own concerns, so eventually, I stopped trying. What truly stung was their complete lack of effort to reach out as I pulled away. They appeared quite content with my absence, almost relieved. That hurt deeply. One expects family to notice when a member is quietly fading from their lives, but they seemed utterly indifferent. This only confirmed my long-held suspicion that I didn't belong with them. Over time, I limited my visits to crucial events like birthdays and holidays. Even then, I felt more like an invited guest than a family member. I'd arrive, attend to the expected family duties, and then leave. Conversations were polite but shallow, devoid of any genuine connection or warmth. Emily and I, in particular, lacked the strong sisterly bond often seen among siblings. She was always the family's golden child, the one who effortlessly followed my parents' desired path and fit in perfectly. I, on the other hand, was the odd one out, the black sheep. While I wouldn't call them malicious individuals, their subtle, disparaging remarks revealed a quiet cruelty. You know those seemingly harmless comments that, upon reflection, carry a profound sting? I experienced those frequently. I eventually decided it was best to minimize contact as much as possible. Why repeatedly put myself in a situation where I felt unwelcome and out of place? Last year, during Christmas dinner, something unexpected happened. For the first time in memory, I didn't feel completely invisible when Jonathan joined us. My family typically has a knack for making me feel like an alien in my own home, a perpetual outsider. Jonathan, though, didn't treat me that way. Instead of the usual black sheep treatment, he was genuinely kind and engaged with me like an ordinary person. Initially, I didn't read much into it. I assumed it was just basic courtesy. However, Emily inexplicably became very upset. It wasn't as if Jonathan and I were having a deeply private conversation. We simply discussed everyday topics: travel, university, amusing work stories, and so on. Yet, Emily's demeanor immediately changed. I tried to disregard the cold glances she shot my way throughout dinner until she cornered me later that evening. "I know what you're doing," she accused, pulling me aside. "You're trying to steal my boyfriend, just like you've always envied me." I was genuinely flabbergasted. Steal her fiancé? The idea was utterly baffling. I couldn't fathom its origin. Even after I dismissed her as being ridiculous and laughed it off, she wouldn't drop it. She insisted I was being overly friendly with Jonathan and that he was acting strangely around me. The accusation was so preposterous, I struggled to even formulate a response. Where was this venom coming from? Emily has always thrived on being the center of attention. My parents idolize her, viewing her as perfect, their golden child, so I understood her need for validation. But accusing me of attempting to poach her fiancé felt like a new low, even for her. As was my habit with her dramatic outbursts, I tried to brush it off, assuming it was simply insecurity or anxiety on her part, especially since we weren't close anyway. The real issue began after that night. A palpable strangeness descended upon us all. Emily, already distant, seemed to actively avoid me. If I tried to engage her, she'd either appear indifferent or offer curt, single-word replies. During family gatherings, she'd cling to Jonathan's side, as if staking her claim, which I found ridiculous. Jonathan, conversely, maintained his usual polite, friendly, and normal demeanor around me. What truly vexed me was my family's implicit agreement with Emily. There were subtle signs, though no one ever directly confronted me. My mother would cast peculiar glances whenever Emily and Jonathan were present. My usually detached father began delivering speeches about the importance of family connections and mutual support. Their behavior was entirely passive-aggressive. The more I reflected, the angrier I became. I've never been one to involve myself in other people's drama, least of all my sisters. Why would I suddenly develop an interest in Emily's fiancé, given that we barely spoke outside of family events? It defied logic. A few months later, my grandparents were the ones who informed me of Emily's engagement. My own sister was getting married, and I hadn't been told. Learning this secondhand felt like a gut punch, though I wasn't realistically expecting a glitter-adorned, personalized invitation. It was the kind of validation that confirmed all my existing beliefs about my family's disregard for me. A small, persistent part of me had perhaps hoped that despite our distance and the underlying tension, she might still consider me part of such a significant life event. We are sisters, after all, I reasoned. We may not be close, but I am still family. Clearly, that was an unreasonable expectation. Upon hearing about the engagement, I kept quiet with Emily. Initially, I thought she might have simply forgotten to tell me, or perhaps she was consumed with wedding plans. Foolish as it sounds, I still extended her the benefit of the doubt, imagining she'd eventually call or at least send a last-minute invitation. But days morphed into weeks and there was only silence. Then, a call from Emily, entirely out of the blue. Since our last conversation had been that strange accusation at Christmas, I admit I was startled to see her name on my phone. I answered, trying to sound casual, as if my own sister hadn't completely overlooked me. After a few uncomfortable minutes of small talk, she delivered the news. "I'm not inviting you to the wedding." I fell silent, absorbing her words. While I wasn't particularly excited about attending, hearing it said aloud still stung. When I asked for her reasoning, she offered the most absurd explanation. "I don't want you there because Jonathan has feelings for you. It would just be too awkward." I couldn't help but laugh out loud. The sheer unlikeliness of this whole situation was beyond belief. Jonathan holds no romantic interest in me, and even if he did, I certainly wouldn't be interrupting their ceremony with declarations of love. It was too preposterous to even engage in an argument. I simply said, "Have a wonderful wedding and a happy marriage," then hung up. Whether or not I was part of her special day ultimately didn't matter to me. I didn't need that kind of drama in my life, and frankly, we weren't close. Emily and I inhabited entirely separate worlds, a reality I had long accepted. Still, I needed to vent and perhaps gain some outside perspective. Am I truly the only one who finds this whole situation utterly insane? Has anyone else experienced something similar? Any guidance would be greatly appreciated. Update 1. I need to jot this down while the details are still vivid, as yesterday was absolutely wild. Emily's rehearsal dinner devolved into utter chaos, and somehow, I found myself at the very heart of it. My phone started buzzing relentlessly as I was enjoying a typical Thursday night, working on an assignment with my laptop. My initial instinct was to ignore it. I've become quite good at that lately. Yet, within 10 minutes, I noticed 7 missed calls from my dad. My father rarely calls more than once. He typically assumes you're busy and tries again later. 7 calls signaled a clear emergency. When I finally answered, his voice was trembling, entirely unlike him. "Michelle, you have to come to the venue immediately," he repeated, like a broken record, "right now." When I pressed him on what was wrong, he simply replied, "It's about Jonathan and Emily. Please just come." His desperation was genuinely alarming. But honestly, did they truly expect me to drop everything and rush to their aid after all the animosity, baseless accusations, and being explicitly uninvited to the wedding? I reminded him, "Dad, I'm not attending this wedding." Emily made that very clear. "Michelle, please," he pleaded, "Jonathan won't go through with the wedding if you're not there." That stopped me cold. What? Before I could process this bombshell, another call came in, this time from Mom. I switched over to find her genuinely weeping. "Your sister needs you," she kept repeating, seemingly oblivious to how they had all treated me for months. Hearing her suddenly champion sisterly love and family loyalty after being perfectly fine without me until things went sideways felt surreal. Then Emily herself called, her voice a jumbled, barely coherent mess. Apparently, Jonathan arrived at the rehearsal dinner and immediately asked where I was. When Emily told him I wasn't invited, he didn't erupt in a rage, but rather expressed a profound disappointment and quiet fury. In front of their friends, the entire wedding party, and both families, he declared he couldn't marry someone who would treat their own sister in such a manner. Emily sobbed as she recounted this. He had stated that after witnessing how they treated me, he couldn't become part of a family that would ostracize someone like that. I was just like Mom and Dad, he'd said, adding that he wanted no part of such toxic behavior. To be honest, a significant part of me felt utterly vindicated. Finally, someone had seen what I'd endured for years. Someone had actually spoken up and deemed it unacceptable. Emily, however, wasn't done. Amidst her tears, she began to detail an elaborate scheme. I was to come to the venue and explain that it was all a big misunderstanding, that I had chosen not to attend the wedding, making it entirely my decision. "We can fix this," she kept insisting. "Just come and tell Jonathan you never intended to go. Tell him you weren't uninvited. Michelle, please, I can't lose him." The sheer audacity of it all was stunning. It was preposterous. After months of painting me as a boyfriend-stealing villain and explicitly telling me I was barred from her wedding because of Jonathan's supposed attraction to me, she now wanted me to lie to salvage her relationship. After she'd made me feel utterly worthless within my own family. I let her sob into the phone for a long moment, saying nothing. Then, as calmly as possible, I stated, "I won't lie for you, Emily. You are now facing the consequences of your choices, of ignoring me and treating me as if I didn't exist. It's not my responsibility to fix this." "But he'll listen to you," she shrieked. "He believes you." I replied, "Perhaps he trusts me because I've never given him cause not to. And perhaps he has doubts about who you truly are, based on how he's seen you treat me. Regardless, I won't be attending the event, and I certainly won't lie to protect your image." She was still protesting when I ended the call. After hanging up, I prepared a cup of tea, switched off my phone completely, and sat down to truly process everything that had just unfolded. Over the next several hours, my phone continued to buzz with notifications. Checking it, I found frantic voicemails from my parents, missed calls from Emily's friends, and texts from relatives I hadn't heard from in years. It seemed my entire family had united in an attempt to pressure me into fixing Emily's predicament. But remarkably, for the first time in my life, I felt absolutely certain that keeping my distance was the right course of action. Jonathan, uniquely, had seen through their behavior, not because of anything I said or did, but purely based on how they treated me. He reached that conclusion himself, and frankly, that felt like the most profound validation I could have ever hoped for. Last night, I went to bed with my phone off and enjoyed the best sleep I'd had in months. For once, let them face the repercussions of their own actions. I'm finished cleaning up other people's messes and serving as the family's convenient scapegoat. This morning, my grandparents, who remain my only family contacts, informed me that Jonathan is not responding to calls from Emily or my parents. He has apparently told his family that the wedding is definitively off. My parents are frantically trying to manage the fallout, while Emily remains inconsolable. And I'm simply here, finally at peace with my decision to maintain my distance. I know this account is lengthy, but I felt compelled to share every detail. I'm grateful for all the supportive comments on my previous post that reinforced my choice to stay away from my family. You were right. Sometimes, it's best to step back and allow others to grapple with the consequences of their own conduct. Update 2. Many of you asked about my childhood and the deeper reasons for my long-standing estrangement from my family. It's a heavy subject, so I held back in my initial post, but given recent events, now feels like the right time to shed some light on it. The core issue is that I experienced social anxiety. As a child, I always sensed something was inherently wrong with me, but I lacked the words to explain it. My parents, however, were traditionalists who viewed mental health struggles as mere excuses. Their frequent refrains included, "You need to toughen up," or "You're just being dramatic." Any display of anxiety or a panic attack would earn me labels like weak or lazy, as if these feelings were a conscious choice. Looking back, the warning signs were plentiful. When I was 15, I faced a major English class presentation. The mere prospect of standing before 30 classmates was a guaranteed trigger for my social anxiety. I barely slept the night before and woke up feeling physically sick. I pleaded with my parents to let me stay home, explaining my distress. My father's response was chilling. "Your nervousness isn't going to stop the world. Stop overreacting." Ultimately, I suffered a severe panic attack right in front of the class. My voice cracked, some kids snickered, and my hands trembled so violently I couldn't hold my notes. The room spun around me, yet I felt trapped. Instead of comfort, my mother's only comment was, "See? You got through it." All that drama was for nothing. Emily, the perfect sister, only made things worse. She was the student body president, the debate team captain, embodying everything I couldn't be because of my anxiety. When she hosted large gatherings, I'd often hear people refer to me as the weird sister who never left her room. One time, I overheard Emily tell her friends, "Oh, she's just antisocial. She thinks she's too good for everyone." College brought a pivotal shift in my life. My first semester was a complete emotional meltdown. Being away from home, navigating new social environments, and simultaneously managing my anxiety while keeping up with classes proved overwhelming. I vividly remember sitting in my dorm room, gasping for air, feeling as though I was dying. My roommate, a true blessing, recognized the severity of my distress and practically dragged me to the college counseling center. There, I met Dr. Martinez, the first person who genuinely listened. She didn't tell me to toughen up or dismiss my emotions. Instead, she helped me understand my condition. After a few sessions, Dr. Martinez recommended a psychiatrist for an official diagnosis. Receiving that diagnosis, social anxiety disorder, felt like finally giving a name to the invisible monster I'd battled my entire life. It wasn't attention-seeking or being dramatic, as my family had always insisted. It was a legitimate and, more importantly, treatable illness. Therapy sessions were eye-opening. Dr. Martinez taught me that my family's actions were not just unsupportive, but actively damaging. She guided me on establishing boundaries, advocating for myself, and recognizing unhealthy behaviors. It was at this point that I began to consciously distance myself from my family. What truly bothers me, however, is their outright rejection of my diagnosis when I tried to explain it. My mother genuinely remarked, "These doctors are just out to make money by labeling everything a disease." Emily, with an eye roll, added, "You're just using big words to justify your antisocial behavior." Last Thanksgiving, before any of this wedding drama unfolded, I made one final attempt to bridge the gap. I prepared a detailed presentation on social anxiety, complete with research and statistics. "Michelle, when are you going to stop making excuses and start living in the real world?" My father cut me off mid-sentence. In that moment, I understood they would never change. They would never make an effort to comprehend. Their ingrained perception of me as the difficult child, the dramatic one, the problem, was unshakable. And strangely, realizing this was liberating. It allowed me to finally stop seeking their understanding or acceptance. Looking back, I can clearly see how these ingrained family patterns directly fueled the wedding crisis. My parents' swift acceptance of Emily's narrative without question, and Emily's immediate jump to believing I was seducing her fiancé. It all stemmed from their entrenched belief that I am inherently troublesome and require management. Jonathan, however, saw right through it. He observed their treatment of me, their dismissal of my feelings, and their tendency to scapegoat me for everything. He identified it for what it truly was: toxic behavior. This stood in stark contrast to everyone else in our family's social circle, who simply accepted their distorted version of reality. My point is, this wedding drama wasn't an isolated event. It's the culmination of years of family dynamics where I was consistently cast as the villain, the problem child, and the one always needing correction. Perhaps that's why Jonathan's decision feels so profoundly just to me. Someone outside finally recognized what I had been enduring for years. So, yes, this is the backstory many of you requested. It explains why I'm in no hurry to mend fences right now. I've spent far too many years trying to alter my family's perception of me, to earn their understanding and acceptance. I've concluded that sometimes the healthiest thing you can do is accept that certain people, even those related by blood, will never truly understand or accept you. Update 3. It's been a month since everything unraveled, and I now need to share the final chapter of this saga. What began as mere wedding drama has truly concluded, though it escalated into something I never could have foreseen. Emily suffered immensely when her wedding was canceled. She somehow acquired my new phone number and distributed it widely among her contacts. Consequently, I was deluged with hundreds of vitriolic messages from strangers, her acquaintances, and distant relatives. These included guilt trips, intimidation, and outright threats. Vandalism soon followed. In true classic Emily fashion, a tactic she'd used on girls she disliked in high school, she first defaced my car with eggs. When that didn't achieve her desired effect, she escalated. I lost count of how many times I found my mailbox destroyed, my car damaged, or my apartment door plastered with offensive notes. The final straw came when she slashed all 4 of my car tires and left a menacing note, identifiable by her distinct handwriting. Throughout this ordeal, my parents deliberately chose to overlook Emily's behavior. Their standard reply to every incident was either "girls will be girls" or "you need to be more understanding of your sister's pain." Even after I presented them with security camera footage of her attempting to break into my apartment, they brushed it off as Emily simply wanting to talk. However, thanks to the invaluable advice from this incredible Reddit community, particularly those who urged me to install security cameras and document everything, I was prepared. The attorney you recommended informed me that her actions transcended mere family drama, constituting criminal harassment and vandalism. We built an unshakable case, compiling witness statements, video evidence, photographs, and hundreds of threatening messages. Emily eventually realized she had crossed a line when my lawyer presented our extensive evidence along with a cease and desist order. The security footage of her attempted break-in proved particularly damning. Through her own attorney, she tried to negotiate, offering to cover all damages if I dropped the case. I refused. This was no longer about financial compensation. It was about accountability and justice. The court proceedings moved swiftly and conclusively. Emily faced charges of attempted break-in, criminal harassment, and vandalism. The judge, noting the premeditated nature of her conduct and the compelling evidence of her escalating behavior, imposed a particularly stern sentence: a permanent restraining order, mandatory therapy, and a 1-year suspended sentence. My parents' reaction to the verdict was entirely predictable. "You've ruined your sister's life over a few pranks," they accused, calling me callous. Even after I recounted Emily's repeated harassment, damage to my property, and attempted home invasion, they simply suggested I just move away if I felt unsafe. After that conversation, I decided I would never speak with them again. Subsequently, an out-of-court settlement was reached in the civil litigation. Beyond compensation for emotional distress and lost income, Emily's social media harassment campaign had cost me several freelancing gigs. She was required to pay for all the damage she had inflicted. Crucially, the settlement included a non-coercion clause, effectively preventing our parents from acting as intermediaries or flying monkeys any longer. My lawyer indicated that the rapid settlement was largely driven by Emily's and my parents' concerns about their reputations. It seems their preoccupation with the opinions of their country club acquaintances far outweighs any commitment to doing what is right. Just as expected. Since then, I've relocated to a new, secure apartment in a building under constant surveillance. All my social media accounts have been deactivated, my contact information thoroughly updated, and my clients have shown immense understanding. In fact, someone who learned of my situation and was impressed by how I handled it even extended a job offer. The most unforeseen outcome of this entire ordeal is that, for the first time ever, I feel truly liberated. My family's expectations and criticisms no longer burden me. I am no longer their scapegoat. I am simply Michelle, building my life on my own terms, free from the labels of being dramatic or challenging. This Reddit community profoundly impacted my journey, offering crucial support through the legal process. Your suggestions for documentation and security measures were indispensable. When my resolve wavered, your encouraging words sustained me, and hearing similar stories made me realize I wasn't isolated. It's important to remember that shared DNA does not grant anyone the right to mistreat you. For those dealing with toxic family members, sometimes the healthiest path is to step away and allow them to face the consequences of their actions. It's about setting boundaries and demanding respect, not about seeking revenge. My social anxiety is improving with therapy, though it persists. It turns out much of it was directly linked to the constant criticism and gaslighting I endured as a child. Who knew that removing toxic individuals could be such an effective form of treatment? This phase of my life is now genuinely over, and I won't be providing further updates. My focus is entirely on my education, my career, and cultivating a new support network of chosen family. To everyone who supported me and followed my story, I extend my deepest gratitude. You empowered me to leave and gave me the strength to advocate for myself. They say living well is the best revenge. I would add that the best closure comes from knowing you finally stood up for yourself. I'm no longer content to be a scapegoat or a victim. I have seized control of my life and will never look back. To Reddit, thank you for everything and goodbye. Thank you for watching this story. If you haven't already, please consider subscribing and pressing the notification bell to keep informed about more compelling real-life narratives.